There we go. That should be happening, yeah? Yeah, there we are. Now we got sound. Now I hope you guys had a good weekend. Had an absolutely great weekend. And thanks for coming by today. On Labor Day. You guys are hanging out with me on Labor Day. So that's cool. Oh, that feels good. Throat was very dry. So how the heck are you guys? Paul, Chris, James, Adam, Chris, Katie. Good to see you all. Oh, it's the same Chris. In a proper world, I could play music stings and stuff like that without getting immediately knocked off YouTube and Facebook. And when you said cooking with gas, I would sum it up, Gas, Gas, Gas by Manuel. But alas, no gas. So what'd you guys do this weekend? Anybody do any fun gaming-related things this weekend? I did not. Although I did, and let me tell you, there's not going to be a lot of cross-promotion of this. I just wanted to mention it because I think it's a fun thing. But this weekend, I did start another live stream only channel on YouTube, but the gaming it has to do with is not exactly precisely at all tabletop gaming related. As I have said before, I'm a huge fan of the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, and so I started a Sunday morning talk show, for lack of a better term, where we cover, I say we, myself and other folks, we cover, basically we break down the game, and we look at the SEC, and then we look at college football world in general. It's a very laid-back style. Chris ran 15 players adventuring in Greyhawk. That is awesome. That's what we like to hear. I did some map populating for the game, plus some overall game prep for that game. Very relaxing. Good. I hope you guys took the hex evolving that we discussed last week. And I hope you took that advice to heart. One of them had never before played a tabletop RPG. Those are the best gamers to get. The best new gamers to get. I have found, now, in all fairness, this is not all cases, but sometimes people will bring their conceits for other editions, or even how they played first edition, to your table, and it's a never-ending stream of, well, in this edition, or, well, in the other AD&D games, and so on, and etc. But people who are tabula rasa, a clean slate, those folks are the best to start over with, or the best to start with, rather, in terms of new gamers, because you have a clean foundation to build up on. Oh, well, that's good to know, Adam. I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. So yeah, that's very cool, Chris. So I do wonder if between Chris and I, if the government's going to step in and bust up our trusts of our monopolies of AD&D players. I have 16. Chris has 15. And as I posted on Reddit, you can't have any AD&D. I have it all. Well, I don't have it all, but apparently I have half of it. And Chris has got the other half. So, 2 Dungeon Masters, 32 players, 31 players. So, to move on. I myself, like I said, nothing terribly gaming related. I wanted to paint, but every time I would turn around to do it, I would get distracted by something shiny. So I'm hoping maybe this week or this weekend I can finally jump in on those Grenadier hirelings that have been sitting there forever and a day. And if I can get them finished up in the next little while, it would be great. 32. I had one who couldn't make it. Okay. Now, I will say this. This is a bit of DMing advice. If you have a large group and someone or multiple someones can't make it and you still have enough people to play, like last week I had 5 or 6 who couldn't make it. And I was like, I've still got 10 people here to play D&D. We're playing D&D. Don't ever intimate, just be careful about this, but don't ever intimate to the absentees that it's okay that you didn't make it because I still have enough people to have fun without you. Just, never make it seem like they're seat fillers. In fact, if they're new players and they played a game and then they missed a game, when they come back, my advice is pounce on them in a good way when they come back and give them a little bit extra, give them a little bit of follow-up on what went on in the game. Hey, KB, good to see you. Make them feel like them not being there was the low light of the game and that you really want them there, because you never want to get to that point where your game is so big, and big is dependent on you as a DM, but you never want it to seem like you're just here to fill seats and for me to be able to say that I have a big game. Always treat the new players coming into a big game with a large modicum of fanfare. Never just like, you're just a warm body. I've got a dozen players already. You don't really concern me. So, just keep that in mind. All right. I was talking about my my sports YouTube there. One of my co-hosts just stepped in. So today, I want to talk a little bit, just a very little bit, because I actually did extensive videos, which I'll link in the description. I'll edit that later. I will link down in the description, and you folks over on Facebook, I'll put links to those videos. We've done extensive videos on NPC hirelings, but I want to look at it as a best practice for players. I want to look at it a little bit, just a tiny bit, from a DMing perspective. And this is on the topic of henchmen and hirelings. Now, as you remember when we discussed, henchmen are leveled non-player characters that your party hires to join your group. From a DMing standpoint, it is incumbent that you play henchmen as much as if they were your own characters possible. Now, that may seem to fly in the face of having a Mary Sue character as a DM. But the one thing that I do want to mention about that is don't necessarily run them as exceptions to everything. Like, don't say, I told you elves couldn't be clerics, but this guy is a special case just because you as the DM want to have elven clerics, but you don't want the players to run them. Or, I said there was no such thing as a halfling magic user. Well, here's one who is. And then tell the players no when they say, well, can I run a halfling magic user? Don't do that to the players. Run them as normally as you would if someone else were DMing the game. They're regular characters for you to run. Also, don't let the party treat with them as if they were disposable. The minute, the 9th level party tells the 4th level ranger, cover our asses while we withdraw out of this cave by yourself because there's 4 trolls coming up the hall after us. Lawful good, whatever good or not, that ranger should basically say not no, but hell no. And leave the party immediately. I mean, they're basically asking a henchman to commit suicide for them. That's not, Similarly, magic users. An NPC magic user henchman will come with his or her own spellbook. And the party may demand that the NPC magic user turn over a spellbook to the party's magic user to allow him to copy spells. Don't allow it. Don't play that magic user that way. Now, if personality-wise you go through, and if you recall there was a personality table, you get gullible and foolish, maybe not. But again, just in the overall, don't let your party abuse henchmen and treat them as disposable commodities. Because they're not. They're player characters just the same. So don't do it. Hirelings are much the same way. Even though hirelings tend to be foot soldiers, with the exception of the officers who will lead large numbers of mercenaries, light and heavy foot, light and heavy cavalry, and so on and etc., fighting men, even though they will equate to 2nd level, 3rd level, 7th level fighters, they're still not adventurers per se. But just the same, if an ostensibly good or at worst neutral party tells all 25 fighters to, form up into a phalanx and march into the dragon's lair and, we'll come and rescue you if we hear something terrible. That should be, regardless of morale, that should be an instant mutiny level situation. Unless the party has shown extreme tendency to having the fallen raised. They've lavished them with magic items to, make their lives a little bit more bearable and so on. A party who's going out for the first or second time with hirelings who, they don't really know, and they order them down to the dungeon first, that should be a red flag. You as the DM, it's up to you. Don't let the characters do that. And another point of order, if they keep going out with hirelings or with henchmen and coming back without any, a lot of these people are going to have families. friends, so on and etc., who are going to say, hey, I hate to bother you guys, but my uncle is Olaf the Bearded, and he was with the Black Stallion Company, and I know they hired along with you guys. We haven't seen old Uncle Olaf in a while, and he's not hanging around with you, and he's not in any billet in town. What happened? And they may have weregild that they have to pay. But henchmen and hirelings, particularly expert hirelings such as alchemists and sages, as we went over in the previous videos, can be extremely useful to the party. And absolutely, if they want to hire those non-player characters, let them do it. Just make sure that they're treating them right. And if they're not treating them right, well, it needs to bite them in the ass. And you, as the DM, need to make sure that their asses get bitten, metaphorically speaking. Sorry, got windows popping up. I was trying to close those. So that's just something to keep in mind. Something that you definitely want to apply when it comes to non-player characters.
Let's try.
Let me see. Now, a question, a lot of people in later editions had fun playing non-human player characters. And I shouldn't say non-human. Non-human or non-demi-human, because obviously an elf is not human. And that's fine. I don't know why the wheels flew off Dungeons and Dragons, and a percentage of people significant enough for the rules to be bent in such a way to allow it. But people started wanting to play monsters. I don't just mean get polymorphed into, or, a reincarnation goes bad. And we'll talk about reincarnation later. But I mean, people who, and I read and hear these discussions, and I keep my mouth shut. I'm polite. I don't edition war no more. But people in these discussions will say, yeah, I'm running a kobold magic user artificer with 2 levels of assassin. And I'm like, I mean, look, if that's what blows your skirt up, awesome. In AD&D, that ain't a thing. And I don't say that because I'm not interested in edition warring, but I'm telling you guys, in AD&D, that's not a thing. You may have that one player who comes to the game. Maybe they come from a previous edition, or maybe they just think they're the cleverest person ever, and nobody's ever said, yeah, what if my character was a brownie? And usually, and I hate to say this because it sounds terribly prejudging, but usually they want to do that because they want some kind of specific advantage. Let's take the brownie, for example. Let's look at the brownie in the monster manual. And my wife, ding dang it, made a pan of brownies this morning. Well, she made them last night, but there's a pan of brownies out there. So let's see. Let's look at the brownie. Now they're 1.5 feet tall. That's like that high. But you start to look at what they've got. They save as 9th level clerics, and they get spells out of the box. Now granted, they only have half a hit die. That's 1 to 4 hit points. But once per day, on top of everything else, protection from evil, ventriloquism, dancing lights, continual lights, mirror image of 3 images, confusion, and dimension door. And they carry short swords. And they save as 9th level clerics. Did I mention that? And they have all these languages. And brownies are capable of blending into the landscape, in effect using natural cover and speed to become invisible and escape if desired. You could see where a player might bring that to the table and say, but they're only, a half a hit die. They might just want a lot of front-loaded abilities. Or for whatever reason. Well, we have here on page 22, open your Dungeon Master's Guides to page 22, guys. A little bit of advice from Gary. Where is it? Or was it? Hang on a second. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 21. It was right above me. Assassin's use of poison. Here we go. And so Gary goes on here. This is on page 21. On occasion, one player or another will evidence a strong desire to operate as a monster, conceiving a player character as a strong demon, a devil, a dragon, or one of the most powerful sorts of undead creatures. Those are factual things that happen at Gary's table. I think it was Tim Kask who wanted to start, he wanted to play a Balrog as a character. And at the time, because there were no rules forbidding it, Gary allowed it, but said, okay, you have to start as a one-hit die Balrog, and your powers may or may not work. AD&D being a little bit more freewheeling that way. The devil or the dragon, I'm not sure about, but one of the most powerful sort of undead, there was a player who came in and asked and was allowed to run a vampire, Sir Fang, which is why we have the cleric now, by the way, just in case you were curious. Because Sir Fang was doing things like charming other players into giving up their magic items and occasionally creeping around town and draining the blood of important NPCs and so on. And in this case, and Gary's right, this is done principally because the player sees the desired monster character as superior to his or her peers and likely to provide a dominant role for him or her in the campaign. A moment of reflection will bring them to the unalterable conclusion that the game is heavily weighted towards mankind. Advanced D&D is unquestionably humanocentric. And note, Gary makes the distinction, advanced D&D. He doesn't say, I regret doing it in OD&D, it was a mistake, and don't do it. So for anyone who's getting ready to say, aha, gotcha, but in OD&D is a different game from AD&D. It's the roots, but it's not the same structure. Anyway, advanced D&D is unquestionably a humanocentric is unquestionably humanocentric, with demi-humans, semi-humans, and humanoids in various orbits around the sun of humanity. Men are the worst monsters, particularly high-level characters such as clerics, fighters, and magic users, whether singly in small groups or in large companies. The ultra-powerful beings of other planes are more fearsome. The 3Ds of demigods, demons, and devils are enough to strike fear into most characters, let alone when the very gods themselves are brought into consideration. Yet there is a point where the well-equipped high-level party of adventurers can challenge a demon prince, an archdevil, or a demigod. While there might be some near or part humans with a group so doing, it is certain that the leaders will be human. In cooperation, men bring ruin upon monsterdom, for they have no upper limits as to the level or acquired power from items or spells. Now, Gary gets into, hello, Chris. He gets into the crux of it here, and I know a lot of people wonder about demi-human level limits. Why can't my elf is going to live for 2,500 years. Why can't he become a 35th level magic user, or a 70th level magic user, or a 10,000th level magic user, or what have you? The game features humankind for a reason. It is the most logical basis in an illogical game. From a design aspect, it provides the sound groundwork. From a standpoint of creating the campaign melu, it provides the most readily usable assumptions. From a participation approach, it is the only method, for all players are, after all is said and done, human, and it allows the role from which most are desirous and capable of identifying with. From all views, then, it is enough fantasy to assume a swords and sorcery cosmos with impossible professions and make-believe magic. To adventure among the weird fantasy is enough without becoming that too. Consider also that each and every dungeon master worthy of that title is continually expanding his or her campaign melu. The game is not merely a meaningless dungeon and urban base around which is plopped the dreaded wilderness. Each of you must design a world, piece by piece, as if a jigsaw puzzle were being handcrafted, and each new section must fit the pattern of the other pieces. Faced with such a task, all of us need all the aid and assistance we can get. Without such help, the sheer magnitude of the task would force most of us to throw up our hands in despair. He's exactly right. By having a basis to work from and a well-developed body of work to draw upon, at least this part of the task is handled for us. When history, folklore, myth, fable, and fiction can be incorporated or used as reference for the campaign, the magnitude of the effort required is reduced by several degrees. Even actual sciences can be used, geography, chemistry, physics, and so forth. Alien viewpoints can be found, of course, but not in quantity and not often in much quality either. Those works which do not feature mankind as a central role are uncommon. Those which do not deal with men at all are scarce indeed. To attempt to utilize any such basis as the central, let alone sole theme for a campaign melu is destined to be shallow, incomplete, and totally unsatisfying for all the parties concerned, unless the creator is a Renaissance man and all-around universal genius with a decade or two to prepare the game in melu. Even then, how can such an effort rival one which borrows from the talents and genius of imaginative thinking which comes to us from literature? What Gary is saying here is basically, when you look at when you look at fantasy literature, even taking into consideration stuff like Dunsany's The King of Elfland's Daughter, The Hobbit, or The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit is kind of an exception because it's mostly told from Bilbo's perspective and the dwarves. The only human that happens along is Gandalf, and well, we know he's a Maya. And then later Bard, the guardsman, and he appears, for perhaps 12.5 pages. But the Lord of the Rings, the king is Aragorn. It's from the minute the characters meet him, it's Aragorn. Hello, Damien. Hello, Maximus. He's talking here about Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. There's no demi-humans in Fafhrd and Grey Mouser's world, unless you count the were-rats. There's mention of quote-unquote snow elves, but I think it's more of a mythical thing. We never see them. Conan the Barbarian, much the same. Now, I do think Gary does a bit of a disservice to Tolkien and later to, dang it, not Fritz Leiber, Poul Anderson, who wrote The Broken Sword, which is told almost from an elven perspective. But that's not the main thrust. Having established the why of the humanocentric basis of the game, you will certainly see the impossibility of any lasting success for a monster player character. The environment for adventuring will be built around humans and demi-humans for the most part. Similarly, the majority of participants in the campaign will be human. So unless the player character desires a character which will lurk somewhere and be hunted by adventurers, there are only a few options open to him or her. A gold dragon can assume human shape, so that is a common choice for monster characters. If alignment is stressed, this might discourage the would-be gold dragon. It is also pointed out that he or she must begin at the lowest possible value, and only time and the accumulation and retention of great masses of wealth will allow any increase in level or age. The idea should be properly squelched. If even that fails, point out that the natural bent of a dragon is certainly for their own kind, if not absolute solitude. So what part could a solitary dragon play in a group participation game made up of non-dragons? Dragon non-player characters, yes. As player characters, not likely at all. As to other sorts of monsters as player characters, you as DM must decide in light of your aims and the style of your campaign. The considered opinion of this writer is that such characters are not beneficial to the game and should be excluded. Note that exclusion is best handled by restriction and not by refusal. Enumeration of the limits and drawbacks. Now, I'll stop there. Gary is basically saying here that don't just say no. Just place enough restrictions on them. Anyway, he says that'll be enough to steer the intelligent player away. For in most cases, it was only thought of as a likely manner of game domination. Well, yes. The less intelligent players who demand to play monster characters, regardless of obvious consequences, will soon remove themselves from play in any event, for their own ineptness will serve to have players or monsters or traps finish them off. Now, for those of you who are saying, yeah, but that's mean old Gygax, come on, Neckbeard, let us play a monster. Bottom of page 21. You are virtually on your own with regard to monsters as player characters. You have advice as to why they aren't featured, why no details of monster character classes are given herein. The rest is up to you when all is said and done in your world, and your players must live in it with their characters. Be good to yourself as well as to them, and everyone concerned will benefit from a well-conceived, well-ordered, fairly judged campaign built upon the best of imaginative and creative thinking. So, basically what Gary's spending page 21 there is asking the DM, are you sure you want to allow this? And the DM should be asking the player, are you sure you want to do this? And the break point at the bottom of page 21, right-hand column, he says, you're on your own if you want to do this. I'm not going to provide you rules. Here's why I don't think it's a good idea. You do it at your own peril. So it's important to note, he's not saying the rules say no, therefore no. He's saying, here are the considerations. You're on your own if you want to go that way. Now, there's a whole section here on lycanthropy. Everything that was just in the section under the monsters player character is just as applicable under lycanthropy, with the added bonus of even a good lycanthrope like a werebear or a were-tiger, which I think, let me see. We're going to look that up. Were-tigers are neutral. So werebears and were-tigers, and possibly were-boars, at least as beings go, are not immediately evil. Doesn't mean they're friendly. But so the consideration might be, oh, well, can I play a werebear character? Oh, my character was bitten by a werebear. No, guys, just let me become a bear. During moon cycles, you're going to go nuts and attack parties, or attack things and live just as one of the animal types. If you've ever seen The Werewolf with Lon Chaney, his hair was perfect. You're going to go off the rails. The character is going to go off the rails. They're never going to have an easy time of it. If the players are insistent that they be allowed to play a monster, no. Or not a monster, a lycanthrope. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. If they refuse to get their lycanthropy cured for any reason, because they're like, no, I'm going to be a were-tiger, it's going to be cool, they're going to undergo an alignment change, which could change their profession completely. They're going to start acting like a savage animal. Chris, I would have... Chris asked a question here. Chris Kane asked a question. In Greyhawk, are lycanthropes controlled by only one moon or both? I'd have it by both. I would have it by both. Primarily to deal with the player who thinks being a werewolf or werebear or wereboar or were-tiger or were-rat is cool. Oh, thank you, other Chris. We like Warren Zevon around these parts. And there are rules. There are actual rules. But on page 22, I think lycanthropy deserves kind of its own talk. But a point of order, just going back to the humans only. No experience points may be gained by a player character while in lycanthrope form. If the character is a fighter or lycanthrope, the fighter will be able to gain levels only as a fighter, never as a lycanthrope. This applies to all classes. The only way a lycanthrope will ever be able to control the change from man to beast is with time measured by full moons. There will be no control of the change into a werebeast for 2 years of game time, and it will be another year before any control will be gained for the change back into a human. 3 years. If they're like, yeah, I'm going to turn in my werebear shape. No, you're not. There are other factors beside the full moon that can cause the release of a were creature. One common cause is stress during melee. If a character has lost more than a third of their hit points, there's a 50% chance that the were nature will emerge, causing the player character to be disoriented for 1 to 2 rounds, etc. Again, I think lycanthropes deserve their own focus because I want to talk about something that you can do to player characters And I hate to phrase it like that. You do it to player characters. But yeah, you're really... This is DM's eyes only. And this is something you should always be doing. So... The American Werewolf in Paris, they get hunted by the people they kill. That's interesting. That's interesting. I have never seen an American Werewolf in Paris. I've seen an American Werewolf in London. And I know that the main character is haunted by the people he killed. They show up as ghouls who just kind of hang around him constantly, and it drives him more than a little bit insane. But so often, low, middle, and even sometimes high-level parties will play the home invasion game and just plow through. It's like, oh, we found out there's hobgoblins living in that abandoned fort over there. Well, we're just going to roll through, kick in every door, murder every hobgoblin, and take their stuff. And that's fine. But oh, Dungeon Masters, do you ever have more than what is just given in the monster manual at your disposal? If this is your first foray into AD&D, your first deep dive into AD&D from a dungeon mastering perspective, am I misspelling it? There we go. Then let me introduce you to page 40 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, Tribal Spellcasters. Boys and girls, you should absolutely, any group of humanoids bigger than 2 or 3, particularly if we're talking about the low hit dice one, should have a tribal spellcaster with them. What's a tribal spellcaster, you may ask? They are witch doctors and shamans. I always thought the plural of shaman was shaman, but what do I know? Tribal spellcasters can be found amongst the following races of creatures: bugbears, cavemen, ettins, giants, gnolls, goblins, hobgoblins, kobolds, lizardmen, ogres, orcs, troglodytes, and trolls. A spellcasting troll. Let that sink in. If you're rubbing your hands together with evil glee right now, you and I can be friends. Because we're going to talk about best practices. Shamans are tribal clerics of 7th level or under. Shamans have only the following spells, and the reverse if applicable, which they are able to cast. Now, looking at these spells, if you're looking on page 40, that may sound a lot like, oh, well, this is very limiting. It's not nearly as cool. If you use these spells properly, yes, it is. So first level, cure light wounds, detect evil, detect magic, light, protection from evil, and resist fear. Let's break it down, what you can do as a DM with each of these. Well, cure light wounds, it's like, oh, we're hacking and slaying the monsters and so on. Let's say they're trolls. A troll shaman who can cast multiple cure light wound spells on the trolls you're fighting who are already regenerating. Detect evil should be detect good. Likewise, detect magic. The monsters are going to know if you're polymorphed, etc. Light. You know that bit about casting light on the face of a creature is an offensive spell? Monsters can do it too. Protection from evil, which should be protection from good. Resist fear. Why aren't the monsters running? Shouldn't they be making a morale check, Mr. DM? Or no, I cast fear on the orc tribal leader. Is nothing happening? Second level, augury. What's coming down the hall at us? Is it going to kill us? Chant. Buff up a whole group of humanoids. Detect charm. Hey, why is Uzzug standing over there with the humans? He's charmed. Resist fire. Yeah, we're going to light some oil and throw it at him. Why aren't they burning? Snake charm and speak with animals. Those two, if you decide that your humanoids are keepers of such creatures. Cure blindness. Your party starts throwing blindness spells out. Well, we can fix that. Cure disease. Dispel magic. They see your party quaffing a lot of potions, or they suspect you might be under the effect of bless or prayer. Dispel magic. We'll just get rid of that. Or fairy fire gets cast on the chieftain. Dispel magic. Locate object. Prayer and remove curse. Divination, exorcise, neutralize poison, and tongues. So tongues might be useful for parley. Neutralize poison if the party's utilizing poison, very helpful. Divination, know the nature of the party, and exorcise. Note that wisdom does not affect the number of spells of tribal clerics, and the number of spells any such tribal cleric possesses is determined as if the shaman were a character of the appropriate level. There is a limit according to the race of the shaman as to how many levels of experience he or she can possess. Third level maximum is Ettins, Ogres, Troglodytes, and Trolls. Fifth level maximum, now I thought this was interesting, Bugbears, Gnolls, Kobolds, and Orcs. Seventh level maximum, Giants, Hailstone, Frost, Fire only, Goblins, Hobgoblins, and Lizardmen. Now that's pretty cool. That's pretty darn cool. But even better are witch doctors, because witch doctors are cleric magic users. That's right. Monsters get to dual class or multi-class, however you want to view they did this. Witch doctors are tribal cleric magic users. In addition to the maximum level of clerical ability noted above, witch doctors of various races are able to use the following spells, and the reverse if applicable. So first level spells affect normal fires, dancing lights, identify, push, shield, and ventriloquism. I think Gary was pretty careful here to not make it the monsters push the I win button, but those are fairly useful. But the identify, the kobold witch doctor wants to let his chief know that the sword is safe to handle. Identify. Second level, audible glamour, detect invisibility, levitate, magic mouth, and scare. Now, with audible glamour and dancing lights, if a party of monsters knows that the adventurers might be too tough for them, or if they wish to lead the adventurers into an ambush, dancing lights plus audible glamour equals, hey, somebody with torches is moving down in that direction. Do we want to follow them? Shield, for obvious reasons, is very handy. Push, ventriloquism, throwing their voice, making it sound like someone in the party is saying something. Scare should be obvious. Levitate, magic mouth, invisibility. A high-level witch doctor casting invisibility on a few key warriors in the humanoid troop could spell disaster for a party. But then there's the maximum level of magic users dependent upon the race. Second level maximum would be bugbears, gnolls, kobolds, and lizard men. And then fourth level maximum, cavemen, goblins, hobgoblins, and orcs. So you could potentially have an orc capable of casting 2 first level and 2 second level magic user spells, and as 5th level up to 3rd level clerical spells from these lists. And you should absolutely, positively, without a doubt, utilize this in your game. If you're running Keep on the Borderlands under the AD&D rules, use this. Toughen up every humanoid party or every humanoid tribe in the Caves of Chaos by giving them a shaman or a witch doctor. Now, I would recommend just making them shaman. Witch doctors might be a little OP for a 1st through 3rd level character in that module. But consider G1. All those hill giants running around. You're telling me there's not going to be 1 or 2 witch doctors amongst them? Designate a witch doctor, or 2, or 3 in Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, or whatever modules. See, Chris has got the right of it there. Loved having a party run into only kobolds, and then them having to deal with the tribe's 5th level cleric, 2nd level magic user, witch doctor. Put the fear of the gods into them. Yeah. It'll make your players a bit more cautious and make the average encounter with some orcs as, oh, we're all 5th level, they're orcs, we're going to plow through them. It'll make them stop and think. Humanoids get the magics too. Yes. And hey, if they've got identify, if you've deemed that they have a witch doctor and not just a shaman with them, but you also note that they have scrolls, if you have shaman or witch doctors, remember, magic users and clerics know just by glancing at a scroll what it is. If you roll up a treasure pile and there's a bunch of clerical scrolls, they're not going to be just stuffed in a chest somewhere. They might be in the hands of the shaman. And guess what? He might start using them during combat, with the appropriate chance of failure if they're high enough level that he can't just read them off. But they might just be able to utilize magic items against the party. You know? Kobolds aren't dragons, nor are giants, or lizard men or orcs, or gnolls or anything else. They don't just pile up all their treasure in a heap and walk by going, that's a fine looking pile of treasure. If they have a witch doctor and he can identify magic items, as soon as you create those treasure amounts, if you determine that they have a witch doctor, start handing those items out. Don't just have them locked up in a room somewhere or a chest. I think it's absolutely incumbent on you to do that. I love the little Errol Otis illustration down there. Now, some races you might note don't get witch doctors. Those are open to bugbears, gnolls, kobolds, lizard men, cavemen, goblins, hobgoblins, and orcs. Giants, troglodytes, trolls, ettins are out of the running to be witch doctors. But shamans, absolutely. And remember, they should be the highest level. Now, Hill, Stone, Fire, and Frost giants are the only giants that can have shaman. But then when you look at cloud giants and storm giants, what they're capable of, and stone giants. But yeah, cloud giants and storm giants, they bring enough to the table on their own that it's not, yeah. So beyond what we see in the monster manual for monsters that can use spells, throw your players a curve. And remember, you've got Dispel Magic. Well, guess what? Dispel Magic ruins potions. It doesn't destroy anything else, but it ruins potions. So absolutely, positively, when you're designing your dungeon or even going with a pre-published module, even if the module doesn't have tribal spellcasters listed, use them. You've got a complex of 40 kobolds, they're worshiping Hextor or Dispater or, some other evil devil. They really, really should have someone, a priest of that evil devil who gets spells and can help confound and harm a party. So food for thought there, guys. And I hope you take that to heart. I really hope you take that to heart. And it's all laid out there. It's very simple. Now, the question might come, hey, do they adventure? Do they gain levels? Monsters are certainly rapacious, and they do go out and do bad. They adventure, for lack of a better term. But I would say, given the limitations that are noted here, probably not. They probably do not gain additional levels. They max out at 7th level, so you could definitely conceive of, again, to go back to the Hobgoblin. Hobgoblins can be up to 7th level maximum. So that means they're capable of casting 4th level spells. And then if you want to make it a Hobgoblin Witch Doctor, well, they can cast a couple 1st level and a couple of 2nd level spells. That's powerful enough. Now, one thing that Gary didn't touch on, I do this, but you don't have to, is if you have a shaman and you're running them as 7th level, should you give them 7 hit dice? I would say so. They've survived long enough through magical experimentation and through running with the tribe of humanoids. Absolutely. So a 7th level kobold shaman, for example, that's 7d4. Don't give any constitution bonuses. So, that's 2, 5, 9, 10, 14, 16. So 16 hit point kobold casting spells and acting like a cleric, that's pretty awesome as it goes. If we look at the standard kobold has a kobold. But a standard kobold has but a single, not a single, they have a half a hit die. And if we look here, For every 40 kobolds encountered, there will be a leader and 2 guards who are equal to goblins, each having 4 hit points and armor class 6 and doing 1 to 6 points. If 200 or more, there will be the following additional creatures. There are 5 to 20 guards as bodyguards above. Females, a chief. So yeah, a spell casting, a witch doctor or a shaman should really, really, really give characters pause. Don't just let your players run around like wild beasts, killing everything in their path. Slow them down a little bit, and you can do that very effectively with tribal spellcasters. If nothing else, it will make the players more cautious. So I hope that particular lesson goes home with you today, guys. Definitely put monsters in a party who are able to do that. Now, the question might come, in the case of lizard men, let's look here. In the case of lizard men or, lizard men are the closest thing of good any of these creatures, or cavemen, lizard men or cavemen. Could our party parlay with these spellcasters and have them come with us? Because, we're in need of some additional firepower in this dungeon. Insofar, now that's up to you as a DM. I can't tell you everything to do, but to conclude today, insofar as what the characters might be asking them to do could be to counter a negative impact on the tribe, possibly. But they're not, they're not going to go 5 miles away, 10 miles away, and help the party slay a bunch of ogres. They're the spiritual center of their tribe. Particularly in the case of lizardmen, who are neutral. Lizardmen are interested in making more lizardmen to keep the lizardman tribe alive. Everything else is not worthy of consideration. But in the case of something that may have an adverse effect on the tribe, maybe, if they were given sufficient reason to believe it, and if there's sufficient reward to justify it, to pay for it. Otherwise, I say no. Even if they've had a successful parlay, even if they've had a genuinely positive encounter with the players, I would say no, they cannot. No, they will not. They'll thank them. Maybe they'll hit them with a bless spell on their way out or something like that. Cold, muddy feelings of Lagozed upon you, and, you can go on. But evil, or tribal humanoid creatures are going to be concerned with themselves and their own well-being. So don't let the players just treat them like, neutral is close to good. Why don't you guys come with us? Oh, you got killed. Too bad. They're not going to send out a very powerful creature, but do give them hit dice commensurate with a level that they should be. And monster manual hit dice too, not player character hit dice. I was using the D4 in the example for the cleric, the kobold witch doctor rather. But in all other cases, use the D8. Use the monster hit dice. It produces a nice range. So that's about all I've got for you guys today. Tomorrow, let's talk about lycanthropes tomorrow. That was a pretty interesting topic. So tomorrow we'll look at lycanthropes, the hows and whys and mechanics of that. And so you guys consider this. If you're designing your own dungeon, throw in some tribal spellcasters, and I bet it will be quite the surprise to player characters. So thanks, everybody, for stopping by today. I appreciate it. It's always nice to see viewers. We're still kind of a scupper at 765 viewers. Don't forget, guys, don't forget, when we hit 1,000 subs, on the channel, Minicon time. So keep that in mind. Tell your friends, tell all your gaming buddies, say, hey, come click like and subscribe on this guy's channel, because when he gets 1,000 subs, dudes, he's going to do a virtual mini-con. Isn't that a cool thing? So anyway, I will catch you guys tomorrow. Have an absolutely wonderful day. Adam, you're quite welcome. Today was super helpful for the world building game prep I'm doing at the moment. I'm here to help. Have a great day, guys. I love you all. I'll see you tomorrow. And yeah, we'll talk about werewolves.